Hi, there's a new Life is Strange game, and Max Caulfield is back. Let's talk about it. Earlier this week, Deck 9, the studio behind Life is Strange Before the Storm and True Colors, announced a new Life is Strange game called Double Exposure, an all-new supernatural murder mystery featuring Max Caulfield, the original protagonist in the first Life is Strange game. If you're a massive Life is Strange fan, this is pretty earth-shattering news. I'm a massive fan, and I did not expect this at all. So I watched the trailer a few times, jotted down some notes, and tried to piece together exactly what's happening with Max, since what I'm guessing is the many years after the events of the first Life is Strange. The trailer and press releases and Steam page reveals quite a few interesting things about Max and the story of Double Exposure, but they also raise a lot of questions as well. So let's take a deeper look. First, let's talk about Max herself. Max is grown up, and she looks grown up. I almost didn't recognize her at first without her bangs. Much better. In an article from Square Enix about Double Exposure, it states Max is a photographer in residence at the prestigious Caledon University. I don't know if this means she's a student or a teacher or whether she just works at the university, it's not that clear. We don't really know what year this takes place in or how old Max is, but there is a hint as to where Caledon University is. If we look at this scene from the trailer, we can faintly make out the words Vermont State Police on this officer's badge. Vermont is a state in the northeastern part of the United States and practically a world away from Arcadia Bay. The premise of the game is pretty straightforward, but dramatic. Max has a friend named Safi who has been murdered, and we have to use Max's new powers to solve and stop the murder. I'll talk more about the supernatural stuff in a moment, but first let's focus on Safi. In that same article I mentioned earlier, Safi is described as Max's closest new friend, meaning that they've only just known each other for a short time. This makes me lean more towards Max being a university student who has just either recently transferred to Caledon or an existing student and Safi is the newbie. If we look at this shot of this mural later in the trailer, we can see a number of tributes and messages for Safi that indicate they're from other close friends she's already developed relationships with, making it more likely that Max is a new student starting at Caledon. Other than this, we don't really know anything else about Safi, other than she is apparently worth it enough for Max to risk the fabric of reality again by using her powers to change past events again. I'll come back to this point later because this is something I'm going to rant about, but for now, I guess we can count this as a green flag? One of the first lines from Max in the trailer is, "I swore I'd never use my power again." As you're all probably familiar, Max has the power to rewind time, both in short increments of the last few seconds she's experienced and going back in time to moments she's photographed in the past. The story of the first Life is Strange was very much facilitated by the use of Max's powers. It's what made her special week with Chloe in Arcadia Bay possible, and depending on your choices, ends with Max losing one or the other. I think this is a very natural place to take Max's character. Max is cautious and careful, and I think it's very understandable for her to not want to use such a powerful power like time travel after the events she's experienced in the first game. And it would make for some very interesting character developing moments in Double Exposure where she's forced to use her powers again, which is very much what Deck 9 is trying to do here. One of the main story drives of this new Life is Strange is that Max is forced to use her powers again to help solve and prevent the murder of her friend Safi. However, her powers have evolved. It seems Max is able to move between parallel timelines seemingly at command, and in the timeline she's shifted to, Safi is alive. This echoes Max's previous ability to kind of do the same thing when she goes back in time through a photograph, changes the outcome of an event, and then returns back to the present in a totally new alternate reality. Except here, we're just skipping the steps where she goes back in time to change an event outcome to create the alternative timeline. This new twist on Max's powers raises a couple of questions, like how the flip is this even possible? How is there an alternative timeline if we haven't done anything yet to create an alternative timeline? I'm actually not going to talk about this today. Discussions about fictional time travel can be endless, and I might talk about this some other time. My very wild guess is that whatever event creates the alternative timeline just hasn't happened yet. It's something that will take place at some point in the future of a future episode. There's also another pretty obvious event that happened in the past that would create two separate timelines, but I'll get to that later. Another question this power brings up is, are we still going to be able to rewind time? I imagine the answer is no. Deck 9 just want to keep things simple for this game, but rewinding time was also what made a lot of the choice-based gameplay moments in the original Life is Strange interesting. Being able to see what the short-term consequences of each choice would bring was pretty unique from other choice-based games at the time, like The Walking Dead. The ability to rewind time also became an interesting character quirk of Max. In a really weird way, it sort of feels like it's a part of her snoopy, curious personality, so removing that aspect of her kind of feels weird. A super wild guess I'll make is that in lieu of Max's inability to rewind time, Deck 9 might incorporate this alternate reality bizzo into the choices. Rather than making a choice, seeing the short-term consequences, then rewinding and making another choice, my bet is that we'll have the option of making a specific choice in the alternate reality, watching how it plays out, then if we don't like that choice, we can return to our original reality and make a different choice. If this is the case, this would be way more interesting than Max's original version of changing her choices. In a way, she would have to live with the consequences of both choices across both realities, rather than just whatever one choice she ended up making in the original. It's still really hard to say at this point how Deck 9 will incorporate the gameplay into the supernatural aspect. Some other cool things we don't really know much about but appear in the trailer are these two moons that appear. Very cool callback, no idea why this is happening or why one of them is red, probably down to all that alternate reality stuff. Max is wearing an owl pin, and there is what appears to be an owl flying right at the beginning of the trailer, and an owl looking right over Max as she hears the gunshot that kills her friend. If you've played Before the Storm, you know Deck 9 has this obsession with birds and meaning. The Life is Strange series as a whole is chock full of these little spiritual connections between nature and humanity, and it's cool that this has carried over into Double Exposure. Another cool thing I noticed is this asteroid in the sky right at the end of the trailer. What's up with this guy? Both the first Life is Strange and Before the Storm frequently use the sky and skyline to demonstrate changes happening in the world. It was really effective at just making you feel like things were happening and that the world was reacting to the events occurring in the narrative. I imagine this is kind of what's happening here, but strange moon behavior and snow in October aside, it's really hard for an asteroid to be affected by things on Earth, even by cute girls with time travel powers. So I don't really have much of an idea as to why this asteroid is here, other than as some reference to Your Name, another piece of media that deals with very similar concepts as Double Exposure and Life is Strange, and has an asteroid streaking through the sky. You guys should really watch Your Name, by the way. Probably one of the bigger questions that we didn't get any real answer to is, where's Chloe? And yeah, good question. Where is Chloe? I think based on everything we've covered so far, and everything we know about Life is Strange, we can come up with a theory that also touches upon a pretty crucial question of how the first Life is Strange will interact with this one. Chloe's absence is likely explained by the final choice in Life is Strange, save Chloe or save Arcadia Bay. If Deck 9 does consider our final choice, then depending on which ending you pick, Chloe is either just not with Max, or she's dead during the events of Double Exposure. Because of how choices worked in the end, this is really the only choice that matters, and so there's only two main outcomes from the first Life is Strange. Considering the premise of Double Exposure just so happens that we can traverse between two different timelines, there's a possibility that these timelines are the same two different timelines from the end of the first game, and that Chloe could make an appearance in Double Exposure through the use of Max's new power. If we bring back a little diagram from earlier, the final choice in the first game would be the changed outcome that creates the alternative timeline in this game. This makes sense, and is pretty cool if you picked Bay. If you choose to save Arcadia Bay, then you can imagine just how much heartbreak and guilt Max has gone through over the years. It would reinforce her pledge never to use her powers again, and you just know that reunion with Chloe at some point in the game would be amazing to witness. If you pick to save Chloe, on the other hand, this makes a little less sense. For one, if Chloe is alive in this original timeline, and she's not actually with Max during the events of Double Exposure, which this trailer kind of sort of seems to imply, then I don't really see why she would be present in the alternative timeline either. If we speculate for a moment reasons as to why Chloe would be present in the alternative timeline, maybe in the original version of the timeline where Max does save Chloe and rides off into the sunset together, at some point they must have separated. And the alternative timeline we explore in Double Exposure is Max seeing what life would be like if she was still with Chloe. Sounds maybe plausible, I guess. Then, what kind of throws all of this away is a line in that article from Square Enix. New players need not worry though, because Life is Strange Double Exposure is a fully standalone experience that requires no knowledge of prior games to enjoy. That seems to indicate to me that maybe this new game won't take into account her final choice from the original Life is Strange. Maybe Deck 9 is going to be incredibly brave here and predetermine which final choice this Max starts off with in her original timeline. And if they do that, it kind of makes more sense, both narratively and alternative timeline gameplay wise, to make saving Arcadia Bay the predetermined choice. Which, in all honesty, I wouldn't hate. That's pretty ballsy. I know probably a majority of people would hate this, but this is precisely why I like it. It's a big gamble from Deck 9 if they go down this route, and it could pay off pretty well if they do this right. Which brings me to the one thing I was going to rant about earlier and makes me a little worried about Double Exposure. From everything we know so far, Deck 9 have set themselves a pretty high bar to meet story-wise. Max is using her powers again, and Max has already gone through an entire game learning about the perils of using those powers. Again, I think it's a very natural step for her to swear off using those powers regardless of which ending she experiences, and therefore she needs a really good reason to use them again. Safi needs to be a really good and well-written character for Max to justify using her powers again. I feel we as the audience need to love Safi as much as we loved Chloe. That's the bar Deck 9 has set for themselves, and they need a really killer and well-written story to do so. While we still don't know much about Double Exposure, we are going to learn more pretty soon. The official Life is Strange YouTube channel is planning to host a live stream on June 13th, which will contain our first look at gameplay and some behind the scenes information. I don't expect Deck 9 to reveal everything, but I imagine we'll learn a little bit more about how Double Exposure fits into the greater Life is Strange narrative. From memory, when Life is Strange 2 was announced and Square Enix held a pretty similar live stream, they did reveal that we could carry over our choice from Life is Strange 1 at the beginning of the game. So maybe we'll see a similar reveal here. The last few things I wanted to say before wrapping up this video is, I missed you guys. Sorry I've been away. I don't know what my future content plans are, but depending on how this video goes and the live stream later this week, then I might make another video on that if anything interesting gets revealed. Personally, I'm very excited for this new game despite not really following anything related to Life is Strange recently. Other than the whole never uploading videos thing, I've been a pretty terrible Life is Strange YouTuber. I only just found out now that this game apparently leaked a while ago, didn't even hear about that. I haven't really followed what's happened with the comics. I finished like the first season of the comics or whatever and didn't really check anything else afterwards. This might surprise some of you, but I have not even played Life is Strange True Colors yet. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. I bought it and everything, and I've never even installed it. I heard about the remasters, they look kinda eh. I remember watching the trailer and saw the lighting and Max's hair in some shots and just thought, the originals looked better. I am, however, aware that Donut, the original creators of Life is Strange, have a new Life is Strange-ish game coming soon, Lost Records Bloom and Rage. Looks cool, looks interesting, and if more information comes out on Bloom and this video does well, I'll look at making a video for that too. That's about all from me. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think about this new Life is Strange game? How do you feel about Max coming back? Where do you think Chloe is? Please leave a comment below because I'd love to know what everyone thinks. Thank you all again, and take care.